In this video, we will try to understand how we can do validations using data annotations in MVC framework. So what I'll do is, let me go ahead and create a very simple empty MVC web application, and let me give name to this web application as MVC data annotations. The first step what we'll do is, let's go ahead and create a very simple model here called as customers. So let me just go and add a new class here called as the customers class, and in this class I'll create a very simple property called as customer code. So public string customer code set and get. Great. And let me just go and build the solution so that it goes and everything is successful, everything is nice. And now let's go ahead and create a simple view, from which we can go and set this customer code property. Okay, so let me go to my controller here, and I'll add a controller called as the customer controller, and let's go and add a very simple view here, and we'll name this view as customer, right? And we'll create a strongly typed view. So I'm going to go and create a strong type view here of the type customer class, which I've just created. Currently I don't have any master page, so I'm going to go and unselect this, and let's click on add. Now in the customer controller, right, we have already created one action result called as index, and this index will actually go and display the customer view, or I'll say the customer.aspx, right? But we'll need one more action result, which will help us to go and post the data what has been entered, from the customer.aspx. So let's go ahead and create one more action result here. So let me just go and create one more action result, and we'll say we'll give a name here as post customer, right? So this will actually go and post, this action result will be used to post customer data back to the controller. And in this we'll be expecting the customer object. So let's go ahead and import MVC data annotations dot models. So when the when the data is posted from the view, we would expect a customer object here. So I'm going to just say customer obj. Now remember that our view is a strongly typed view, so we would get a constructed object in this action result. And over here what I'll do is, I'll just go and return the same view, that is customer, right? Now let's go ahead to the view and create a form which can actually go and connect to this controller. So let's go ahead and switch to the view here, and let's use the HTML helper class to go and connect to the controller. So in order to create a HTML form, so we're going to say using HTML helper class, that is HTML dot begin form, and we will use this overloaded method here. So the first thing is the action name. So our action name currently is post customer. So we're going to say here post customer, comma, so the controller name is customer, so I'm going to say this is customer, comma, and the form method is post, right? And this is where our form ends, right? Percentage curly bracket. So you can see now this creates our HTML form here. There is some error here. This error is happening because we are using the using statements, but we have to ensure that we put the round brackets across the HTML helper class also. So it should start with a round bracket and then one more round bracket for the begin form method, right? So no errors over there. And also we need to create a button here uh, so type equal to submit, right? Let's say value submit, right? Now we also need to create a text box, which will actually go and bind to the customer code property, right? But I would like to introduce to you guys one more very nice function here called as the HTML dot edit for model. Now this edit for model function, right, what it does is it actually goes and reads your class, your model class, and generates the input UI accordingly. So now, for example, here what will happen is it will go and see, okay, you have a customer class, it has a customer code property, and it will go and create one text box here, which will actually go and map to the customer code property. So in other words, this is more of an automation, to create your user interface. So there we are all set. Nice, right? So what will happen is, first we call this what you call index function here, or we call the index action. So that will just go and return us the customer.aspx, and when the person goes and hits the submit button, it will actually go to this customer controller here, and it will go to the post customer to post this what you call the customer data to the controller, right? Now we would like to go and put some validation to this customer class. So for example, like one of the validations we would like to put here is that the customer code is compulsory. In other words, if somebody does not put any data in the in the text box, in the customer code text box, it should just flash up an error saying that the customer code is required. Now that's where we can use the data annotation. So rather than going and writing in the controller saying that, okay, if the obj.customercode.length is equal to 0, then raise exception, what we can do is we can use using system.componentModel.annotations, data annotations, and now I can just go and put one property here, attribute, I'll say required. That's it. Now putting this simple attribute here, what will happen is in case if somebody does not enter any data into the text box, it will raise exception, or it will display a message on our ASPX page saying that this data is required. And we can also go and define some nice message here. So I can say here like error message is equal to customer code is required, right? Great. Now also we'd like to go and display this error message somewhere in the page. So currently you can see that yes, we have the begin form, we have the text boxes generated, we have the submit button, but there is nowhere we are saying that go and display the error messages, right? So in order to display the error message, right, what I can do is I can go and say HTML dot validation summary, right? So this will actually go and display all the error messages which are generated because of this annotation tags, right? So we are all set now. So let's do a build first, and then we'll try to run this application. So let me click on build and do a build solution here. So I hope that we don't get any kind of errors. So there the compilation goes, and it's all fine. Good, nice. Now let's go ahead and do a control F5. So there's our application running, but we have to first go and run this action. So we can say here /customer/index. So you can see that this is the customer controller and this is the index function, and we'll just go and press enter. There are some errors here. The following locations were searched, but we did not find any of these. Okay, that's right. Why? Because our view name is customer and not index.aspx. So let's go ahead and correct this. So we'll say here, when you call this, please ensure that you call customer.aspx. So let me just go and build this, and let me again go and press enter. So there it is, right? So if I put some data and if I click submit, no errors. But if I go and delete this and if I put submit, if I click on submit, you can see that it is now displaying this message over here saying that the customer code is required. And just to reiterate, or just to remind you guys, this is the same message, which we have put here in our data annotation tag, right? So that's working very nice. But there is one problem here. This is firing at the server side. In other words, until I don't click on submit, right, or until I don't make a server side trip, the validations are not happening. Now that's not something good, right? We would like to go and exploit, the browser power, and we would like to execute, some of the validations on the browser side itself. So for example, as I type and I do a tab, right, or when I just go and delete all the data, I should get this customer code is required. In other words, I would like to fire the same validation on the client side, right? So currently this is getting fired on the server side, after I do a post back. So how do we do that? And the good news is that we don't have to do too many things. Okay, now remember that in our MVC project, right, if you go to the scripts, right, we have lots of JavaScript libraries over here. So what we have to do is, first we have to go and paste some of these JavaScript libraries into our HTML head over here. So you can see that basically I have gone ahead and I've imported 3 important libraries here. One is the Microsoft Ajax.js, Microsoft MVC Ajax.js, and Microsoft MVC validation.js, right? And what I have to do is, once I've done this, I have to just go and say HTML.enable client validation. Now if I do this, right, what will happen is it will go and enable client validation for this thing, that is the required attribute, right? So there it is, enable client validation. Some errors here. Sorry, it's not a directive, it's a function call. So there it is, right? So I'll go and build this solution now, and let's again go back to our browser. So there's a browser, and what we'll do is, let's first go and run the customer page. Let's make a get, right? So now if I type something, it's fine, but if I go and do a delete, right, you can see now it's firing the same errors on the client side. So if I type here, the error goes off. If I do this, right, I can see the error. So even if I've not submitted the data to the server, right, my validations are firing now on the client side. So in other words, the good part about the data annotations is that basically, or when you validate by using the data annotation tag, is that you write it once and then you can generate what you call the logic both at the client side as well as the server side. So it's like write once and then fire the validation wherever you want to. So this is the best part about the data annotation tag. Also, one of the best part about data annotation validation is that on the controller side, you can easily understand, or you can easily check if your model is proper or not. So for example, now when the what you call end user goes and clicks on the submit button, and the submit actions come to this post customer what you call action over here, what you can do is you can go here and say that, okay, my model state is it valid, right? So in case if all the validations given in the data annotation tag is met, then this is valid will be true, or else it will be false. So I can say that, okay, if this is valid, then what you do is that you go and call, must be your customer can have some kind of a save method here, which will actually go and save what you call data to the server side, to the SQL server, right? So I can say over here, okay, if the model state is valid, then please go and call the save method, right? Or else just go ahead and show the view, right? So in other words, it's very easy to go and check if if your model is valid or not on the controller side also. So that is again one of the best part about the data annotation validations. Now I would also like to make you aware of some other validation attributes here. Like one we saw is a required what you call attribute, but you can also use the string length. So by using the string length, in case if you say that, okay, my string length should be 50, then in case it goes beyond that value or beyond that length, it will just throw up an exception. Okay. Second is, if you wish, you can also use the regular expression attribute in case you want to write some kind of a custom validation. You can also use a range attribute to just check if the numbers are within range. You can also use the compare attribute. So in other words, sometimes you would like to compare value of one field with the other field. For example, if you have a property called as password and you have a property called as confirm pass, then probably the confirm pass and the password should be equal, right? So what you can do is you can say something like this, say that okay, compare the password with the confirm pass, right? So these are some of the what you call attributes you can use or you can leverage other than the required field attribute which we have just discussed. So string length to check the length, regular expression for something custom, range to check if the numbers are within that range, and then compare attribute to check if one field is equal to the other field. And just in case if you want to just get the error message of a particular field, what you can do is you can say model state, the field name, the errors collection, and the first error message. So let's say if your field has more than one error message, you can go and browse the collection if you wish, or in case you want to just take it what you call index wise, you can use the index and get the error message. And now sometimes what can happen is probably you create the model, you pass in the values, and you would like to just go and check if this what you call if the validation is working properly or not. So what you can do is that you can call this try update model function. Now this try update model function, what it does is it actually explicitly goes and runs all the validations you have defined by using the attribute, and says that and actually tells you that if the object is valid or not. So one of the ways which we have already seen is from the UI, from your strongly typed UI, when the customer object is filled, you come to know that the data is valid or not. But in case you are creating the customer object here itself, for example, let's say that you are creating the customer object inside the controller like this, right? Obj new equal to new customer, and you would like to just go and validate if this what you call object which is created is valid or not, then you can go and call the try update model function, right? And you can just go and pass your customer object over here and see that if this is valid or not. So that's it for data annotations. So I hope that you enjoyed this session. In this session we saw that how we can apply validations using data annotations. Thank you so much.